they're into Taylor Swift, then become a Taylor Swift fan. If they're into Fortnite, become a Fortnite fan. Whatever they're into, then you become a fan too. And culture, how do you learn culture? You ask your kids about it, and that's how you connect.
Hey, yo, good humans. Timothy Howard Timmons here. Welcome to another 10,000 minute podcast. Remember, there are 10,080 minutes in a week, and 80 of those minutes people spend in a church gathering, which is awesome. But there are 10,000 other minutes, and it's not what do we do for God in the next 10,000 minutes, but how do we join him? If you've been listening, you've heard this a million times, but what would it look like if we just joined him all week long? I mean, I say it all the time, probably because I need it, but it's pretty profound. So, and then how do we practice his ways during the week? And I don't care what political side you're on or who you love or who you don't love as far as, all that stuff. But are we acting like Jesus's people? I don't care what your theology is. Are we acting and representing the heart of Jesus in Jesus all week long? So really, it's trying to figure this out. And this season, it's all about relationships. So this episode is with Jim Burns, the Jim Burns, who or whom? Help me out with that. Is it Jim Burns, whom I've known my whole life, or Jim Burns, who I know my whole life? Just let me know, because I am so confused on who or whom. Jim Burns, one of my great heroes. I've literally known him my whole life. Jim is the president of HomeWord, which is a terrific organization that just helps parents and marriages, and they just are all about relationships. It's so beautiful what they do. So they speak to thousands of people all over the world every year. Some of his most popular books are Doing Life with Your Adult Children, The Purity Code, Creating an Intimate Marriage, Having Serious Fun is one of the titles. Check out Jim Burns and HomeWord, and there's a bunch of his information in the show notes as well. He's married to Kathy, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we start. They're just trying to figure it out, and I love this couple. So if you want more information, go to the show notes, which is right below this. We've got something coming up. Our second Cancer Survivor Retreat is coming up. If you're listening to this before August 12th through 14th of 2024, we're doing our second one. So if you know anybody who has cancer, has had cancer, and is going through it or is in remission, this is a beautiful event. We're doing it down at Bob Goff's place down in San Diego. And the rates are really cut like way in half because a bunch of you have been committing to sponsoring people to come to this event. Cancer patients, we're always still paying for the last procedure we had. So I know that very well. I'm literally still paying for a CT like 2 years ago. So they don't have money, but anybody who does have money can start giving toward that. You can go to the show notes there. And if you want to sponsor a friend to go because it's just going to be rejuvenating and a great soul time for them, you can do that there. And we have Kay and Rick Warren. Kay is coming down to share some stuff with us and just to encourage us for one of the days. I love Kay Warren. We had her on the podcast season 1, I think, or season 2. And Kay has been a really good friend. We kind of both were diagnosed around the same time, and it was just beautiful to go through that with her. So she's going to come down and encourage us. We've got Drew Worsham, who is an illusionist. You will love Drew Worsham. Just as a human, you'll love him. He's hilarious, but he has got crazy depth. He's just another wonderful human. So go to the show notes there. Go to 10,000minutes.com. If you guys want to sponsor what we're doing, thank you for those who are doing it. It is so beautiful. This is how we do this stuff, is through you guys jumping in. If you get the text messages and they're helpful for you, and you're seeing Jesus during your week better, then would you support what we're doing? So go to 10,000minutes.com. In the upper right-hand corner, it says partner. Please help us out. We don't have a Patreon. We send out a special email to just partners every month. So if you guys are loving the season 3, subscribe if you haven't already, because it's really helpful for us, and you won't miss an episode. If you'd like to join the 10,000 Minute community, give to our nonprofit, and get our weekly text messages, check it all out in the show notes. That is enough talking. Timothy Howard Timmons. Here we go. Jim Burns, giddy up. Jim, and I'm going to be real honest right now. You do not age.
Is that bald-headed guys don't age? No, it's just when you're bald, you don't age.
Jim, you knew me. Everybody, this is Jim Burns. I've already said all this great stuff behind his back, which I didn't mean a thing of it, but it felt like it was the right thing to do. But Jim, how long have you known me?
You were 5. You were Timmy.
I was.
In fact,
Timmy.
I'll be honest with you. Thursday, our mutual friend Doug Fields and I had lunch, and I was telling him that I was going to get to hang out with you. And I said, "Hey, I'm going to get to hang out with Timmy Timmons." And he goes, "Don't call him Timmy anymore."
Oh my gosh. You can call me Timmy, just so you know.
Okay.
You have the right. There are few people in the world that have the right to call me Timmy.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
I appreciate it. I won't call you Timmy, though. You've grown up. You're a big guy now. But I mean, honestly, I remember being at your house because I was the youth pastor at the church that your dad was the pastor at.
Yeah.
And, you're kind of running around. So I'm trying to connect with the 5-year-old kid. And I was young then. I mean, I was in my 20s. But the last thing you wanted to do was hang out with the 20-something. But anyway, I tried. And then also, I just need to tell you right at the beginning that my wife has a total crush on you. It's a healthy crush. You don't have to worry about that.
We'll take a healthy crush.
There was a time, there's been a couple of times where we've interacted, but one of the last times we actually saw you were at a big fish fest, thing. And the only reason we came was to see you. So we come and I text you and you go, I'm coming out, and Kathy had just had cancer. And so you walk right to her. You don't even look at me. I'm in front, and you went right to her, and you loved on her, and you actually prayed with her. And she's always thought you were wonderful, but there's Jesus, and then right below Jesus is Tim. So anyway, thank you for doing that. It's a trait that I have seen with you over and over and over again. And I live in the same community that where all your fan club is here in Southern California, and we are fans, all of us.
Jim, thank you. I mean, I am shaped. So your influence on me and all the people around me, and on Doug, who shaped me, Doug Fields, who shaped me in crazy ways, in some terrible ways. I mean, my humor is jacked up because of you two.
So bad.
But thank you for what you've done in my life, and all the people that I get to parent, all the 200 kids that I have, and marriage and all that stuff that you've been working on for years, and you've not stopped. I mean, you just keep trucking. So thank you, and well freaking done is what I'm going to say.
Well, thanks. I mean,
somebody
somebody asked me if I was going to retire soon, and I went, I'm not going to retire. I'll just keep doing it until I either drop or nobody wants to listen to, an old guy talk. But so far, it's going great, and it's a privilege. And now my kids, who you actually have talked to many times, you and Christy went to the same college, but I'm now a grandparent, and it's my number one exciting thing to do. I have a James who's named after me, and having that legacy is a lot more important than I just love my grandkids. I've got 4 of them. It's great. Maybe more coming. Who knows?
Well, speaking of these things, we're in a series on relationships. And Jim, you've started HomeWord. I mean, this is kind of what you do. And you're kind of the guru on all this stuff. And before all the people were gurus, you've kind of been doing this and speaking on this stuff and inviting parents and working on marriages.
Yeah.
And in your last days, or when you're done, that's going to be a crazy filled room of people saying, my life, my whole legacy, this line has been shaped by this man. So
again, that's an honor. I actually just made me tear up, you big punk.
But how cool is that?
But I do want you to know,
cool.
to quote Monty Python, I'm not dead yet.
Strong.
Okay. Well, that's not really Monty Python.
And that's why you're on the podcast, because you'd be a terrible guest. He's gone, everybody, but
it would be amazing if that actually did happen and somebody, spoke to Tim Timmons back from the dead.
Yeah. Real short. Anyways, well done. And you're going to get to help me, because I'm a dad trying to figure it out, and a bunch of people.
And you married way above yourself with Hillary. I'll just tell you that right now.
I did. She's a babe, and we're trying to figure. I mean, we're doing it. We're 25 years in, Jim.
Wow.
And we still make out, which is cool. Got that going for me. And we're doing the hardest thing I've ever done, ever. We work really hard on our marriage, and marriage is so difficult and so beautiful.
Yeah.
And parenting is so, I remember Kenton Beshore said, when you get married, it's like getting your master's in character development. And when you have kids, it's like getting your doctorate in character development.
True.
And I'm like, I'm just tucked that away. And it's just so true. I look at my life and I go, gosh, I am being so shaped. And every part of me that's coming out is going, gosh, that's not beautiful. Jesus, reveal more crap in me, because it's like welling up and it's all being refined.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've asked our community just for questions.
Yeah,
would you just throw out questions? What would you have for relationships for a therapist or somebody who knows stuff?
Mhm.
And so I've got a whole list of questions that we can
Yay.
just kind of like truck through.
Let's
And
do
you
it.
can go, great, that's dumb. Let's move on. Or,
Right.
Whatever the question is, you're like, well, don't be an idiot. Just be kind. Next.
Yeah.
We can kind of do that.
Actually, that's pretty much the answer for everything. Don't
Is
be an
it?
idiot and be kind. Yeah, I think you just said it. That's a title for a book on parenting, marriage, life. Don't be an idiot.
be an
Just
idiot.
be kind. Yeah.
Just be kind. Well, I'll write
Yeah.
it with you. Let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's your other 800 books that you've written. Okay. So we're going to start off with some questions. Help us with your experience.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite questions before I jump in that I love asking therapists and different people, but in this case, you are pro-family, like pro-marriage, kids, parenting. What are some of the major pitfalls that you see parents diving into these days?
Yeah. I can think of 2 right off the bat, and I could probably think of 25, but one of them is that it's this breathless pace in which we live our lives. We're so busy. I think busy people, we look at that as like successful people, but busy people are broken people, and busy families are broken families, and busy marriages are broken marriages. And I'm not saying we all move to Montana and live in a commune, because we got to figure out how to do it here and now. And that takes discipline. It takes boundaries. It takes saying no. I was speaking at the Promise Keepers Pastors Conference. So this dates me because that was some time ago. And Maranatha Band, worship band, they're amazing. Yeah. And I was going to come on right after that because, as you well know, many people in ministry, pastors especially, have some goofy family stuff. And that's what I was going to talk on. So I'm talking to Pastor Jack Hayford. And I said, Jack, what's the secret to your leadership success? And without a moment's hesitation, he said, Jim, it's not what I've chosen to do. It's what I've chosen not to do. Now, this is a guy who's the president, he's passed away now, but he was the president of a denomination, mega church pastor, president of a college, busy
He's
guy.
my next guest, by the way.
Oh, it'll be great to hear him. But the point, he said to me, it's not what I've chosen to do, but it's what I've chosen not to do. And I said, Pastor Jack, unpack that. Again, the band is playing. I'm getting ready to go up there.
Yeah.
And he said, I needed to make sure that I said no to even good things so that I had enough time for my primary relationships, my relationship with God, my relationship with my wife. He names his wife, my relationship with my kids, and he named all of his grandkids. Now, he obviously had other things to do, but it was that busyness. The second thing that, and it bothers all of us, I just spoke on it last night, is this idea of how, as families, how do we create a media-safe home? I was speaking to kids, that I used to do that, $250,000 of them a year or so.
Yep.
So now I don't do that now. I talk to their parents. They're more messed up than the kids, I think.
Yes.
But I said to kids, I was in Richmond, Virginia not that long ago, and I said, how many of you are addicted to social media? All of them put their hands up. They even knew they were addicted.
Yeah.
Well, I think families are struggling so much because that phone, that digital device, whatever it may be, that gets in the way of good relationships. And so we have to be careful with that. Now, those are the 2 things that I'm concerned about. Could I talk about some of the weirdness of culture and all that? Sure. But actually, I think we're so busy that we can't deal with some of the primary relationships. And I think we're so distracted that we can't then work on the things that are most important. I mean, 11% of people say that they have made love who are married while they're on their phone, and they were on their phone. I'm not talking about taking pictures. I'm talking about they're checking.
Right.
Seriously? Are you kidding me? 11%. Yeah. That's 11% of the population doesn't care about the theology of baptism. I mean, and I like baptism. I'm not burning that. But I'm saying, are you kidding me? You're that distracted that you needed to do that? What's wrong? So I think those are issues that I have concerns about. And I actually think there are some good answers, but they're not easy. So sometimes even simple doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah. Question 1 had to do with parent-child stages. That was my summary. So what are some of the ways our relationship dynamics with our children should change as they grow older?
Yeah. By the way, it's a great question. The reason is because a lot of us don't parent within that stage. So let me take very quickly, I'll do this real quickly, but let me take 5 stages. Yep. So first is the caring stage. Your child from 0 to 2, you can't discipline them really. They're not ready. People say, can I discipline my 1-year-old? No, you just love them. You hold them. You're very tired because they're up in the middle of the night a lot of times, but you care. And what you're doing is setting a foundation. Then you move to the control stage. Now, if you're a control freak, you love that. And I'm going to call that 2 to 10. Basically, you're micromanaging your children in the best sense. You're not going to let your 8-year-old go to the mall or we live at the coast, so we're not going to let them go down to the beach. So the control stage. You're telling them kind of what to wear and what to eat and all that. But then we have to move them, because the bottom line is you're trying to move from dependence to independence, because you want them to become responsible adults. So with that in mind. So then the next stage is coaching. You're going to see that they're all C's. I'm sounding like our friend.
I love it. Well, I'm taking notes, so we're doing great.
But coaching, and that's from like 10 to say 14 maybe. And with the coaching, you're still in charge as a parent, but basically they have to start making some of their decisions on their own. Coaches give timeouts, coaches lead, all that. Then you move from at 14, and parents who are control freaks are really, this is really tough for them. At 14, you kind of move to consulting, where most of their day-to-day decisions should be done by themselves. I mean, they should decide what they're going to wear. My daughter Becca one time went to church, and I was like, Becca, you do realize that they can see your entire, body
all
in
the
this
things.
thing. Yeah. And I said, and that's going to be the last time you're going to have this. And she didn't go, Dad, you're amazing. She said, oh, Dad, you're just so conservative. Whatever. I'm thinking, I'm honestly not. But mainly you're consulting. And then what's interesting is you go back to caring.
When is consulting end?
Consulting goes to about 18, 19.
Okay.
And my kids, anyway, when they were 18, they go, I'm an adult. I'm going, well, then why don't you act like an adult? And why am I still paying for your cell phone and your insurance and all that kind of good stuff? Yes. But the point being is you've got to give them the passport to adulthood, and you go back to caring. So now, if I'm giving them advice, unsolicited advice is taken as criticism for an adult. And also what they're hearing you say is not your advice. They're hearing you say, you don't trust that I'm all grown up. So with that, part of it, you have to make the move from being a day-to-day parent. You're fired as a day-to-day parent because you're not there. Now you move to mentor coach. And I would say it took all of the 20, my kids are in their 30s. It took all of their 20s for us to make that adjustment, because they didn't know how to be an adult and I didn't know how to parent an adult.
Yeah.
But now I think I'm more in the mentoring role, where they're asking me a lot more questions about parenting or whatever their issues are. And that is a really cool stage. I love the stage I'm in right now with my kids. But it's funny is because it's similar to the same stage that I had with them when they were little. Now I can care, but I don't have to give my opinion unless they ask for it. And that's mentoring.
That is so helpful. I'm thinking about 49 things that just happened when you're in this consulting stage, when I'm probably still coaching too much.
Yeah.
Are there things to look out for as I've got 4 teenagers in the house
I know.
right
You're
now.
living in the teen world. Yeah.
And my teen, like my 13-year-old daughter, is like 49. Like, she's probably older than me. She's like, yeah, Dad, it's so weird. You're kind of an idiot, but she's amazing. But she's just like this old human.
Right.
And I'm probably still in caring stage and control stage.
Right. No, I think it's good if you're married, listeners who are single, but if you're, and with kids, but if you're married, it's so good to have that conversation. We had to have it at each stage and then remind each other as time goes by. And what we felt like is we said, okay, did I just move back into the control stage, or did Kathy? And we actually had permission to mention that to each other. And Kathy, of course, she's not shy about that. She was going to say, I think you're kind of trying to control them right now. And you know what? They are 18. You're not going to be able to control that 18-year-old. And I go, but I'm right. And she goes, oh, I didn't say you weren't right. I'm saying, is that the right parenting style?
Right. Oh, gosh.
And because if you're looking at the end result, it's responsible adulthood. So you got to think of this when your kids are 5, but when they're moving rapidly from that coaching and consulting stage, as a parent, you've got to do that. If not, you're enabling them. When kids are enabled, they get entitled, and then they have a failure to launch. So that's what we're seeing in America today. So again, the way to do that is to consciously give them responsibility and let them run with it. And actually, experience is a better teacher than advice. So if they experience something and they have to learn from it, then you give them tough love. Tough love is, it's not being mean. See, we think that's mean. No, it's allowing the consequences of their poor choice to actually happen. So now you show empathy. It's kind of like, oh, man, I'm so sorry. But as we talked about, now you just, for the older kids, you just lost your cell phone privilege because we discussed it ahead of time that, you got the weekend, you don't have the cell phone. Yeah. And I'm so sorry. Oh, but. And they're not going to say, thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mom. They're going to have every excuse known to humankind.
Yeah.
But we'd already talked about it. So that's where you're kind of helping them have the responsibility. And they go to work, they go to school. If they don't turn in a paper, they're going to get a bad grade. So as parents, we need to lead, not try to be their best friend. And I think you do that by working within those stages. Now, the stages get blurred. I am with somebody who right now, who I was just talking with them in a counseling thing. They're in a stage where their kid is doing drugs and it's kind of a mess. And so they've had to kind of move back into more of the almost control stage because that child is in such a bad place. That's where you still got to give them a little bit of rope there, but you also, for the sake of their life, the person was suicidal, different things, you got to come back there.
Yeah.
So don't make it where you go,
no, that's really great.
Yeah. So you got to be careful, but it's always messy.
What's the most damaging thing a parent, can do to my relationship with my kids?
The bottom line is, here's their question. Do you still love me if they've messed up or whatever? God loves us not for what we do, but for who we are. In my office, I have a sign that says every child needs at least one adult who is irrationally positive about them. And my daughter, Heidi, who I had to discipline and all the other things with her. I mean, normal kid. She was in our office, like around Christmas, she needed something scanned. And of course, her father didn't know how to do that. Yeah. So I said, well, just go to the office. So I go into the office and she goes, hey, look at this sign. She goes, Dad, you're that person for me. I honestly started to cry. And yet I know there were times when I put her in timeouts. I gave her, as a younger kid, I told her she shouldn't kiss the two twins the same night. Yeah. Because that wasn't smart at youth group.
Yeah.
So I had opinions, but I want to be that person. And I actually want to be that person for my kids, for my son-in-laws, because I have all daughters, no hormones or drama in our life. Yep. My grandkids, I want to be that person. And I think it's possible to be. So as a parent, that's what you do. Now, in the midst of it, I think the other thing is, the best thing I can do for my kids is love my wife. And it's not perfect. I've been married a long time. We have a high maintenance marriage, but I need to give them security and be a person of integrity with my marriage. The Bible says in Proverbs 10:9, the man or woman who walks with integrity walks securely. And I honestly think their kids will be more secure if you walk with integrity. Doesn't mean perfect. It means authenticity. Yeah. So I think that's key to the whole thing. So I'm going to go with both of those. Show your kids this unconditional love. Becca, one time, she was about 16 and she didn't always want to pray with us at night, but we tried to always do that. And so sometimes we would just pray. But this time it was Kathy, me, her doing the holy huddle. Your dad taught me that word. Yeah. And Kathy said, Becca, do you want to pray? And she goes, yeah. She goes, dear daddy, I mean, dear God. And Kathy leans over and goes, her God looks like a bald-headed nerdy guy. Not that I was replacing God, but we are going to show that kind of love. And obviously, every child doesn't have that. They come from broken homes. They come with people they have parents who are more wounded. But even at that time, and I'm going off for a second, but, like with Kathy and I, we came from dysfunctional families. So, the Bible says you inherit the sins of a previous generation to the third and fourth generation. But we made a decision. Are we going to repeat those sins or are we going to recover? I would say the second best decision we made, maybe the third best, because the first best was God. I became a Christian when I was 16. Second best was marrying Kathy, which was totally a lucky job on my part because she's amazing. But then the third part was we decided to recover, try to change the trajectory for our family. So we had to not look back at all the goofiness of our family past. I mean, it's there. We have to learn from it. Yeah. But what were we going to do to change the trajectory? And part of that meant Kathy and I were going to be committed to our marriage and living a life of integrity. We don't do it perfect, but that's my thought.
Yeah. Thank you. Not a lot of people have lasted through it and done that well. So Jim, once again.
Yeah. Well, we haven't done it perfect, but like last weekend was my 50th wedding anniversary. So I know you think I'm, probably 22 or 23, but that's not
right.
true.
That was what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So these people clapped. I didn't mean to. I just said, kind of in passing. Kathy and I celebrated last week 50 years, and people in the audience, a couple thousand people, they clapped because that doesn't happen as much. I wish it did. But it's called perseverance. And you know what? I want to be the role models for my kids. And again, stuff happens and there's people who don't have that. And there's people obviously who come from families that are broken. Right. However, to me, still the answer is, at least for me personally, is to try to walk with integrity. And I can't do that alone. I've got to be I've been in a small group where every one of these people for 22 years. We're having dinner tonight with people who lived around the corner from you growing up, the Brammels. And we'll talk about great stuff. And he's older and wiser than me, and I learned from that guy. Yeah. And so we try to lean into those kind of things so that we can find people who are people of integrity, people who do it right. Not famous people. I mean, I know famous people, but they're usually too busy for me. So I'm looking for people who are just slugging along with it.
You have modeled to a whole group of us intentionality. I mean, there are plenty of people who have been married 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a difference between an intentional couple who have worked on repair, worked to change things, been intentional, being curious.
Yeah.
Man, again, I'm going to say it probably 9 more times, but well freaking done.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I won't say his name because he's a very famous Christian rock artist who lives in your neighborhood. I said, what's the secret to your marriage success? He goes, well, we've pretty much been to every good counselor in Nashville. I went, awesome. They're working on their stuff. They've stayed married because they persevered. It sounds so unromantic, but with the pace of his life and just all that's being thrown at him and her and their kids. So what did they do? They went and got counseling. And the Bible says where there's no counsel, the people fall. In the multitude of counseling, there is safety. They're putting guardrails around their life. So you do whatever it takes to get healthy.
Well, whoever's listening, I'm sure you haven't gotten any pieces of encouragement yet. Okay, so here we go. How do you navigate being hurt by your children? How do you forgive your child?
Yeah.
My teenage kids will say things that are just so hurtful, hurtful. It's like, oh, do you not know I'm a human? I don't know how many times we've said, just so you know, we're humans with like hearts and stuff. Like
exactly.
But knives feel good straight in the heart or kicked in the privates. It feels great.
Exactly. I mean, I don't have an easy answer because you are going to be hurt. When families come together, and intimacy means connection. When you're developing connection, you're hurt. Kathy has hurt me. I've hurt Kathy. My kids have all said things that have hurt me deeply, but that's where forgiveness does come in. And sometimes as parents, we have to be quick to forgive. And, like for me, if you don't forgive your child for something, then that's like you drinking rat poison and waiting for them to die. For the other person to die. So I think it's important that we go quickly toward forgiveness.
I'm throwing it out there again for a friend. But when they don't see in our home, it's like, great, we just have to own our stuff. We're all going to do stupid things. But what we do in this house is we own our crap on our side of the court.
Right.
But when things aren't owned, I think is when I personally have a tough time participating in forgiveness.
But the hard part is you have many more years of spiritual discipline. You have many more years of wisdom than your kids. So if they don't do it the way you want them to do it, it may just be that, hey, they're a teenager. They're going through an experimental phase in life. They're still trying to find their identity. There's all these other kinds of things. So with all of that happening, we can't expect them to have an adult reaction because we don't even have a good adult reaction sometimes.
Right.
So this is where we have to be patient, walk in their shoes.
So good, Jim.
I was talking a while back and I said to parents, they were all parents of teenagers. I wrote a book called Understanding Your Teen. And so I was talking on that subject. And I said, what were you like at 15? And people groaned and laughed. It was the funniest thing because I go, okay, well, I said, I don't think I need to say anything more. If you're having trouble with your, with your 15-year-old. And everybody doesn't. I mean, some people, like they were really, I think my wife, Kathy, was pretty compliant at 15. She's kind of compliant now. That's just kind of her personality. Like she's one in a million. But most kids, because they're going through that experimental phase and they're going through all that, they don't know how to forgive. So part of it is they have to watch you do it over and over and over again. The Bible talks about training up a child, and we kind of kill that scripture. It's found in the book of Proverbs. But training is partly them just watching you, say, I'm sorry. I know I had an experience with Christy once where I yelled at her, and I'm not a yell. My dad was a screamer, rager, so I kind of do the stuffing. It's actually maybe worse. I don't know. But I yelled at Christy. I freaked her out. She was 12, and I freaked her out, and I slammed the door. I left, and then I'm like, well, I have to. It's my house. I need to come back. And I went into the room and I said, Christy, I am so sorry. That was all about me and some of the pressures I have, and that was not about you. And this little 12-year-old, she kind of held me and she goes, I forgive you, Daddy, and I love you, and I'm proud of you. It's what a parent should say. She was 12. So then she freaks out at 17, and I go up to her and I go, hey, we need to have a talk. And she says, stop. I just need to say to you, I am so sorry. That was all about me and not about you.
Wow.
And so I hug her. I'm still mad at her, kind of, because she had really blown it. And I give her a hug and I go, do you remember a time? She goes, yeah, it was when you yelled at me when I was 12.
Oh,
but
gosh. Wow.
I'm
what
thinking,
a great view of that scripture.
Yeah. So the point being that, sometimes don't expect your kids to do it right, but you can teach and train them how to do it. I mean, part of it is, you sit not in the heat of the battle. I don't think it ever works in the heat of the battle, but on, some time out, hey, we're going to go out for, frozen yogurt or whatever, somebody's into, and just say, hey, I want to tell you how you hurt me. But say it in deep love, and maybe they'll get it and maybe they won't. But that's what we do. We go 4 steps forward and steps back, and that's just how life is. And they need to learn it now.
That's so, I mean, that's what Hillary and I do in our marriage, is coming with that intentionality.
Yeah.
And in a sense, it's like, no, this is what we're also teaching and training our kids to do.
Right.
Which I know, but this is so helpful. That's so good.
Yeah.
So good. Okay, we're moving on. How would you encourage parents and children who don't connect well to find common ground? Are there good questions, connecting questions I can use?
Yeah. Well, there are connecting questions, but I would say before you do the connecting questions, just have some serious fun. Because what connects us? Serious fun. If you're sitting, even in marriage, if you and Hillary are having a conversation about, the depth of your relationship or finances or the kids or whatever, that's not fun. And so sometimes it's hard to connect on that kind of thing. Sometimes parents want to connect and they want to ask meaningful, faith conversations and things like that. Awesome. Please do it. However, sometimes what you need to do is just have fun. I have a friend who's a pastor in Portland, and his 15-year-old informed him that he didn't want to go to church anymore because he goes, church is boring. And the pastor, we're laughing because he goes, I think he was talking about my sermons, right?
Yeah, that felt good. Continue.
And I said to him, I was talking to your son because I'd seen him. I was talking to your son. He's really into basketball, isn't he? Yeah. Well, why don't you go to Walmart and buy a basketball hoop? It's going to cost you $150 or whatever, and go put it up in your yard. Start playing basketball with him and just have some fun with him. The next year I came back to the conference that I was at, and he was there. And he goes, hey, my son, we had a turnaround. We started playing basketball, and we were really competitive. And so I wouldn't let him win until finally he got better than me. And one day he said, hey, Dad, I want to talk to you when the game's over because I really have kind of had a feeling that God is working in my heart. The kid had not been going to church. They sit down on 2 basketballs, and the son said, so I think I want to do youth ministry. And this dad is like dying. And it kind of came because he had connecting with his dad. I bet you that son knew that his dad was totally bummed that he wasn't going to church.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes it's having fun. Now, here's an interesting statement to answer their question more. I think we need to have faith conversations in the home. And I would rather have people have 100 1-minute conversations than one 100-minute conversation. They need to hear that. So it's just in passing type of things. But there was a study done by George Barna, who's a friend of mine, and he did this amazing research on why kids are leaving the church. But I think it relates to any connection with intimacy and connection. And what happened was, of the kids who are leaving the church, unfortunately, kids who graduate from high school are fleeing the church. I get it. It's tough. However, if they have faith conversations in the home that aren't toxic and preachy, there's a 300% better chance that they're going to stay in church. That's amazing. We finally have an answer to some of this stuff. So parents have to have these faith conversations. So then parents, what they want to do is give a big, long sermon to them. No, like little James, he's 8, and he's my grandson. And anytime there's a siren and we're in the car, then we're supposed to pray. And so the other day we were driving down Dana Point, and siren goes by. I didn't pray. I didn't say anything. And James goes, Papa Jay, you're supposed to pray. And I go, oh, right, siren. Okay. I go, why don't you pray? Well, his prayer for this person was a lot better than my prayer. I go, why don't you pray? Okay. That's a faith conversation. Have 100 of those kinds of things. And it's not just about faith, but have 100 conversations. And then I learned this when I was going to Princeton in grad school. I was the area director for Young Life, and we always said, earn the right to be heard. And so what I found with my kids is the best times to do that was with my girls. I took them on a date. So it'd be usually around food. Like we'd go to breakfast or we'd go do something. And half the time we wouldn't talk about anything serious. And then the other time, just out of the clear blue, they would bring up something serious. And I think that's what you do. I think you wait for those. It's kind of like fishing. You kind of wait, And so those conversations need to be there, but don't force them. But also, if they're into whatever, if they are into Taylor Swift, then become a Taylor Swift fan. If they're into Fortnite, become a Fortnite fan. Whatever they're into, then you become a fan too. And culture, how do you learn culture? You ask your kids about it if they're at a certain age, your kid's age. When they're younger, you're not doing that. And it's easier to have fun with them at the beginning, but that's how you connect.
I have a lot to learn with this stuff. I think I do it pretty well, but there's so many other ways that I've been thinking about just after hearing this that I could just lean into my kids a little more. My boys, they love playing them some games. I absolutely hate their dumb Fortnite games. Like I have actual disdain for it. Yet it's kind of where they are with all their buddies all the time. And they've said a few times, Dad, just come play. And I'm like, no, just because I have like this like moral issue with it, but there's no moral issue with this. How beautiful that I would get to connect with them. So guys, that's what I'm going to actually practice is I'm going to jump in and just play a little bit with them. Just why not? I'll be the idiot. They love watching me be an idiot. My daughter Malia, she loves just listening to music. Actually, both my girls do. And just to go on a drive with them and listen to music is their greatest joy. So I've done that a few times, and maybe I just might ask if I can go do that. I want to rethink how I connect with my kids in this current season that I'm in, and I'm inviting you to do the same. I even think about early on when I was writing songs, terrible songs, mind you. My mom would ask me, hey, could I hear one of your songs? I still remember that. That meant so much to me. So what are those little moments, those things? And the poor girl is probably listening going, wow, that was unbearable. But there's something beautiful about me feeling like somebody cared about what I was doing. So let's figure that out. And no matter what season of life we're in with our kids, whether they're learning the ABCs or starting to drive or just moving to a new city, it's never too late to start being intentional with them. So how can we lean into that, lean into what they're into this week? It might just be a phone call. Let's practice learning their world and connecting where they are. These are the moments that they will carry with them throughout their whole lives. Let's rethink intentional parenting.
I don't think you connect by having deep conversations. What do you think, to the 6-year-old is the meaning of life? They don't know what the meaning of life is. Yeah. Okay. And so I think you just play a mean game of chutes and ladders or whatever they do. We're now into that. It's an older game, but we're now back with our grandkids. So I just played chutes and ladders. It's kind of a dumb game, but hey, they love it. And
they love it. You're leaning in.
And whoever wins gets candy, and I usually win, so I get the candy.
How do I not lose my mind when my kids are so irrational? I know I'm supposed to be regulated, in quotes, but it feels impossible at times.
Yeah. What's interesting is we asked that to a therapist who's a good friend of ours who actually now has passed on, but she was at our church because our daughter was driving us nuts. And she said, don't engage, don't argue. This particular daughter was very strong-willed and, did that often. So walk away from it. Just take a breath, walk away, don't personalize it, and know that they don't really know how to cope with stress yet. So they're coping with their stress in a way that's not good. And then sometimes just say, hey, so how did that work for you? Because they're doing it. Think about a kid who's 4 who has a tantrum at the grocery store. I just saw a video that was so funny. The mom gets down on the floor. It's in the middle of the grocery store. And, honey, how are you feeling? And it's all this kind of psychobabble.
So good. Yeah.
Funny, but don't do that. That's ridiculous. So when kids are doing that, say, hey, when you're done acting like this, let's come back together. And so then it becomes a learning experience. But at the same time, you got to have a pretty strong self-image yourself to go, I'm not going to murder my child right now, or I'm not going to think that I'm all bad because it's all about me and my children who are acting out are doing that. And sometimes it's really good to just bounce that off somebody else. Hey, pray for me. I was talking with somebody who's in men's ministry, and he was saying how good it is when men call another man and just go, hey, look, I'm going nuts. I'd like to murder my child right now, but I'm not going to, and I need you to just be my wingman on this or whatever. Yeah. Awesome. He's right. That's what we do. Find what helps you and then help your kid learn to cope with stress better. But it's not at the same time. We don't help our kids in the heat of the battle. Now, sometimes in the heat of the battle, we do need to go, you are on a timeout. You are going to your room. You honestly have to do that. But like I talked to a guy this week, it's going to be one of my new favorite illustrations. He said he caught his kid on porn. And I was talking about healthy sexuality and stuff. And he goes, so here's what I did. I took my $2,000 computer and I broke it over my knee. He goes, and then I told him he could never have a computer while he's in our home again. And I said, how'd that work out for you? He said, well, actually, I was really depressed that I broke my $2,000 computer. That was my problem, not my kids. I made it worse. He said, and then I also realized that by taking a computer, which he needs for school, out of his life for the entire deal, I have to now back up and say, well, I'm going to change my mind. I said, that's not all bad because, he saw your incredible passion, but also to say to your son, you know what, I was out of control and I am back to the apology. I am so sorry for that. Now that I'm a little more calm, that's obviously not something that I'm happy about you watching. So, and that's not really great, healthy, beautiful sexuality. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to meet with you on a regular basis, and let's talk about what healthy sexuality is, because it's not that. So in other words, you turn it from, it's not that, what you just saw, it's this. And now you turn it into something positive. Easy to say when you've just broken your computer, but.
Right. That is a beautiful repair that, as you said, is a teaching, is a training.
Yeah, no, and parents need, I mean, I love that you use the word repair, because that's awesome on so many levels. Doug Fields and I wrote a book on the first few years of marriage. And what we talk about is there's a natural drift. And so repair is that you make course corrections. So yeah, we're drifting. I mean, here in where I live, where you used to live, if I got on a boat and I was going to Hawaii and it drifted 1%, it's going to end up in like Australia. Yeah. So what is the way to get back to going toward Hawaii? You do course correction. So a repair is simply a course correction. Parenting and marriage are repairs and course corrections for the rest of your life. Don't think it's going to get all of a sudden perfect. And people have to get the skills. Communication, it's a learned trait. So one of my mentors, he's a guy named Neil Clark Warren. He founded eHarmony. People think of him as that, but he was actually a marriage expert. And he said to me one time, Jim, communication is a learned trait. Well, repairing is a learned trait. So I've helped your mom out for years because I send people to her. Yeah. Your mom's counselor.
Yeah, she's been on here. Everybody knows Carol.
Yeah, so you know that. We're saying that for your listeners, if they didn't know, but I know she's been on the program. Yeah. So I say, go to her because she knows the patterns. She knows what to do. We don't. I mean, nobody taught us how to repair, but counselors, interestingly enough, do. And the Bible says where there's no counsel, the people fall in the multitude of counselors are safety. So you go to a counselor, like your mom, you go to a coach, you go to the pastor, you go to the youth leader, whoever it is, but you get help from people. And it all doesn't have to be professional. But tonight, I will have 4 or 5 questions for our friends, Randy and Susan, just because I get the chance to be with them. Now, I'll never show them those notes. They'll be in my pocket or, someplace, but that's what you do. That's counseling. We think of counseling as like laying on a couch. That's not counseling. I mean, I'm sure they do that someplace, but it's just getting wisdom and counsel from people.
I mean, the beauty of you and your legacy is honestly curiosity. I mean, without the curiosity of like, I wonder what they know that I don't know.
Exactly.
I mean, that is, I don't know which scripture that is, but I'll find that.
Right before our conversation, I was actually interviewing a woman for my podcast. I just started a podcast. I'm trying to be you. So I started asking her questions that were meaningful to me for marriage. So I actually, instead of like going with her plan thing on her outstanding book, I was well, what would you do in this situation? And hey, free counseling, free advice.
Totally. Okay. Jim, I'm going to do one more question. Do you have time for one more question?
Absolutely.
What are some strategies for managing challenging behaviors in my children? How do I shape their hearts, not just their behaviors?
It's really not about as much the behavior as it is shaping their heart. So sometimes we have to take a step back and look at what's the reason behind their behavior. Like take, for example, anger. Anger is always a secondary emotion. So if your kids are angry, it's not the first emotion. The secondary emotion is that anger, but what's behind the anger? Well, I feel lonely, or I got, somebody bullied me at school, or I'm struggling with gender issues, or whatever those things are. So try to find what that is. And you can do that without having to play therapist as a parent. And sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. Don't expect it to happen every time. But I really do think that it becomes more of a heart issue. So that's where we want to be working on developing an atmosphere of affection and warmth and encouragement. And, those are all communication skills too, but we don't. We tend to just go to the behavior. I'm going to punish you for this behavior. Yeah. Actually, I think a better way of doing it is if your kids their actions aren't good, I think you give them a responsibility, whatever their age. And then if they blow it, and they will probably.
Meaning, sorry, give me an example of give them a
Okay. You can't hit your sister. Don't hit your sister.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but you give them a responsibility and say, you know what, I think you can not hit your sister. And the fact is, if you hit your sister again, I'm going to take your cell phone away. Or if they're littler, I'm going to put you on a timeout, or you can't go to soccer practice, or whatever it might be. But as soon as that happens, then you're like, oh man, I'm sorry, I have to take your cell phone. You aren't going to go. And they're going to, it's not like they're going to go, thank you. They're going to say, and then you give the responsibility right back. It could be curfew. It could be talking back. Well, any of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is you're saying, I believe in you so much. Here's the responsibility. Now, if you do blow it, you have consequences. If I blow something, I have consequences. Like I was telling Elijah here in our studio, I was on a trip. I was in Minneapolis and I left my iPad in the car on the front. I preached with it. And so I put it on the passenger seat like an idiot instead of putting it and I left. I was in a hurry. And so they found it. So it's costing me $50 some to get the iPad back. And that is a consequence that I actually deserve for being an idiot. Okay. But I'm grateful I'm getting it back. It's coming, I hope, today.
Yeah.
But there's a consequence. So kids have to learn consequences. So I think it's really important for us to help them with that kind of behavior issues. But we're not just dealing with the behavior. We have to deal with what's going on inside of them. So that's why we spend time with them through high school. I mean, I had a meal probably most every week with my daughter, Christy, because she talks when there's a meal. And I would say a lot of the issues about her behavior, I mean, they bugged me. But during those other times is when I'd find out, oh my gosh, this guy that she really liked said that he would never go out with her. Or she said, you know what, I remember at Point Loma, when she was at Point Loma Nazarene, she wrote an article that said I had to disown my parents' faith to own my own faith. Well, during that time, I knew that she was kind of going through some of that. And I wanted to scream in the pillow. I wanted to pound on things. But with her, I listened, kind of had a body experience going, oh my gosh, you're disowning our faith? Well, she had to own her own faith. I mean, that's what you do. So those kinds of things happen not in the heat of the battle, but they happen, during those other times. That's why we have to be proactive about it. I mean, the theme for years of my conversation is intentionality, I think. Yeah. It was your word, but I think we really have to be intentional about that and not get so freaked out in the moment. And we do as parents.
What I love that you said is it's less about just killing it in the moment. It's like, I'm going to practice being great at these things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you
do. It versus just saying I'm gonna be great at this in the moment. We get good at what we practice. Exactly. And so even this repair stuff, the intentionality, like these are practices that we have to do, which is so important. And the other thing that I was thinking about when you just answered that question was that my wife's Hillary's so good at this, at looking like what my behaviors, like what's underneath my behaviors as a parent. Because there's plenty going on under there of why my son did that I'm now angry, and we know it's a secondary emotion. Why am I angry? What's underneath that? Which is more intentionality.
No, and it's true. And when we do that, we're healthy people. We get healthier. And when we're healthier as a parent, then we're actually, as a person, I should say, we're healthier parents because, some of our goofiness that rubs off on our kids is because we're not doing the work to be healthy ourselves.
Jim, thank you so much.
Well, like I said, I watch you, I pray for you, I get all the stuff. I've been waiting for this for a long time. So
come on.
Yeah, I finally made it to the Tim Timmons show.
You're paying me to do this. This is so great.
No, I just made it to the Tim Timmons show. Yay.
$200 to be on the show. So it's a big deal. Big deal.
No, great to be with you.
So what's this new podcast?
Well, I started a podcast, HomeWord with Jim Burns. It's really creative, isn't it? Okay, HomeWord started two podcasts. One is by an incredible woman named Paige Klingenpeel. She married a Klingenpeel. And it's called Embracing Your Season, Parenting the Littles, Understanding Teens. So we're making a move. HomeWord's making a move to have more faces, kind of a different way of going about it.
I've noticed that.
How do we deliver content to the next generation? Yeah. So our board is behind it. We're excited about it. Doug and I will be a part of that. But there will be many new faces and many young faces and a diversity of faces.
I love
and voices. And it's exciting. Well, for me, then I get to do this podcast, HomeWord with Jim Burns. But I'm really most excited about what we're doing at HomeWord with, all the new great stuff. We're delivering 1-minute videos with great content. Not me, but I mean, I guess I'm on it ever so often. But every once in a while, Elijah and Kelly let me in, but not very often. Yeah, I love it. I love where we're going. I mean, old now, but when I'm old and, out to pasture, I think HomeWord will have its greatest season because millennials, interestingly enough, this just came out that, and this is kind of random, but I mean, there's all kinds of things. I mean, they meander toward marriage and meander toward responsibility. And so we all say that's bad. But however, once they get married and they make babies, that's the number one thing they want. They want a good marriage and they want, to be a good parent. So how do we who are in family ministry provide that? And there's a phrase we have at HomeWord that says, when you welcome the family, you welcome the world. And you could be a Democrat or a Republican, you could be a Christian or not Christian, you love your family. So we want to be a ministry that provides help to all who want help with their kids. And to do that, we have to change the way we've been doing stuff. And I'm thrilled about it.
So good.
Yeah.
Love you, Jim.
Yeah,
so
love
grateful
you.
for you.
Timmy.
Hug your wife, please.
I will.
Timmy. You call me Timmy anytime you want.
You got it.
Gosh, I have a few takeaways from this that were pretty profound. I'd love to hear yours. So go to one of our socials and let us know what some of your takeaways were, because there's so much to learn in here. And I would love to hear things that you have done in some of these areas that have been helpful, because I am a parent and I am in constant need. The first one was the 5 C's of parenting. So care, control, coach, consult, and then care again. That was really helpful. I don't know. I would encourage you to have somebody else listen to this with you, or a spouse or another parent or a few parents, and talk through, what does this actually look like? Next was leaning into what your kids are into. Obviously, I just talked about that a little bit ago, but I want to do that better. I want to rethink how I'm connecting with them, because I kind of want to connect with them on my level at times, even when the things I think they're doing are kind of immature and dumb. But gosh, this is what they're into. Let me just dive in. Like my kids today, my boys, they don't really know how to use power saws. So they had these like hand saws out there trying to cut this big piece of wood. It was hilarious. Like, it would have taken them 49,000 years. But I said, you guys, this summer, why don't we just we build some stuff with your buddies? Let's come up with it. Let's plan it. Like, yeah, that'd be super cool. And I don't really have time to do that, because I look at my week and I've got 3 jobs and I'm maxed. But I was like, this is perfect. This is something I could do that's into what they're doing. Okay. Anyways, what is that for you? That was really helpful for me. Parenting takes practice was the third thing. It's not about killing it as a parent, but being intentional with our kids. Like, I love that idea of parenting takes practice. It just freaking takes practice. I'm not going to be great at it. And each of these seasons are so different. Like my age kids now, I think about, I've never done this before. They've never done this before. It just takes practice and a whole bucket of patience. So the practice this week is to lean into whatever your kids are into. Where do you see their attention going lately? Sports, gaming, fashion. Be intentional. My daughter, she's 13, but going on like 49. And she loves her skincare. And the other night, I just sat up in her room and I just said, show me this stuff. Like, what do all these things do? And it was so fun. She's just the coolest human. And that was a way that I can do that. I can be more intentional with that. So that is the practice this week. Learn their world and lean into what currently makes them feel seen. So let's practice intentional quality time with our kids this week, no matter their ages. Okay, so let us know about these practices, what you're learning. Please go on our Facebook group. Check that thing out. It's probably in the show notes. Link is in the show notes. Everything is in the show notes. And let's practice these things as a community, because just by ourselves, we're really meant to do these things by ourselves. And the more that I'm reading scripture, it's like, oh, the whole point of these things and Jesus's God's like design for this human project was for us to be this together. Even salvation, that it is actually not really this like just this personal thing. It's this into this communal group. That is the salvation into this group. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. So how are we doing these, and who are you doing these things with? Guys, thanks for listening. Honored to be in this with you. Keep letting us know. Share these things. It'd be helpful. Subscribe to this podcast. Share it with friends. And sign up for our free weekly text message. On your phone, you'll dial. Gosh, I'm old. You'll put in your phone the number 59925, and then in the subject line, you'll put 10K, 10K, or you can put Timmons. Both work. One's really arrogant. One is more about 10,000 minutes. Okay. Love you people. So grateful for you people. Okay. Bye.